right, take two. Hi everyone. I'm Steve, and we're very lucky to have Olivia here today for one of our first interviews for EagleTalks. So Olivia is a junior in Atrium Dorm, and the reason why we have invited her to this interview is because she has some expertise in a vein of study that is not very commonly seen among high school students, but it's certainly a very interesting vein of study, which is linguistics, the study of languages. So Olivia, would you like to give us a little bit insight into this vein of study and help us who are not that familiar with this vein of study to kind of catch up?
Yeah, sure. So linguistics, it's pretty obvious, is the study of different languages, but it's not really like us trying to learn a bunch of different languages because we're all humans and our brain kind of has a capacity that we just can't like learn every single languages in the entire world because there's thousands of it, to be honest. And so linguistics is more of a comparisons between different languages because although they're all from different groups, different families of languages, they're all really like similar to one another in that we look at their forms, their pronunciations, and more often we look at the relationship the language has with the society that it was spoken in. Since, well, like for each society and each culture, there's always like distinctive characteristics in it, which kind of just impacts the language, and it makes that language just so unique because some concepts in a certain culture doesn't always really translate into other cultures. So linguistics is really an interdisciplinary study where we kind of look at societies and cultures through learning about languages and studying the logic behind the languages. So it's really like intertwined with logic and societies and the culture behind it.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. I think it's a really cool thing how we get to speak a language that our peers understand and can make a reaction upon. And I read articles about how language is really cool because although languages originated from different places in the world, such as Africa, in Asia, Chinese is so different from English or Espanol, but all these languages are similar in some certain ways which reflect the instinct of humans. For example, all of us, a majority of the languages in the world pronounce the word, which means mother, as a syllable which start with M. For example, in English, you will call it mom. In Chinese, you would call it mama. And in Africa, it's going to be something different. But they always kind of start with a syllable M, which is something that's very, something very interesting to kind of analyze and study. And, that's the power of study of the language. And it's something very cool to kind of learn more about that. And so how did you like started with the study of linguistics, and what part of the experience really intrigues you about keep working on this vein of study?
So I was actually first introduced into linguistics through a competition, which is called the Linguistics Olympiad. It is one of the 13 internationally recognized Olympiad for like academic Olympiad for secondary school students, and it has its like branched off competitions in both China and the United States, as well as many other different countries. But the China one and the United States one are really the only two I can participate because of my nationality and where I go to school. So Linguistic Olympiad, it's just like any other Olympiad, like Science Olympiad, Math Olympiad. It's basically solving questions that's related to linguistics. So I was first introduced into this Olympiad by someone I know personally at home, and he's a few years older than me, but he's really so he does this linguistic Olympiad thing, and then he talked to me about it, and I was like, oh wait, that sounds really interesting, because that I used to did probably like 1 year of Math Olympiad, or at least I like practiced it when I was in middle school, and I was absolutely terrible at it. Like I can't even believe how you can't even imagine how terrible I was at it. But anyway, so my friend spoke to me about this linguistic Olympiad, and um, he said it was really easy. So I took a look at the problems and found it to be like just so interesting and just um, so like organized, like logically. So it's not the same as any other Olympiad. So for linguistic Olympiad, since okay, I'm gonna start talking more about the competition here, but the competition, the problems that it has on a competition, it really is. Um, it basically is like giving you a bunch of examples of a certain language, and then you're gonna try to find a kind of logic in this language. Then you're gonna apply those logic, those rules that you've discovered or assumed to solve some other problems it gives you. For instance, to translate this couple of sentence into English or into Chinese, or to write something into this language, this targeted language. So for linguistic Olympiad, it's really different from other subjects Olympiad in that once you find out the solutions to one problem, once you really like get it done, really, it's like the moment when you finish a problem, you know that you get it right. It's either you don't finish a problem and you get partial credits, or you finish the entire thing and you just feel like so accomplished after spending normally an hour figuring out one problem that has probably like 20 small questions. You just feel like so accomplished. And you also get to learn so many really random trivias in languages that I personally think is just really interesting and fun.
Yeah. So from what I heard, you kind of started with like an apprenticeship from one of your friends, obviously, and the test itself, like the Olympiad itself, is really like logic based. So obviously you won't know that language. Like for example, you won't speak fluently or write fluently in Swahili languages from Africa, obviously. But it's more about like logic, reasoning, finding out the pattern among languages that actually help you to kind of figure out what the word means or translate it into something in a target language. So that sounds obviously that sounds very difficult for me, but I think you probably have mastered it in some way. And I heard you went to the one of the linguistic Olympiads this summer, right? With a couple of friends. And from your
Yeah,
post, I feel like that was a really good experience for you. Was it fun? Did you
yeah,
win with
it
your
was.
friends or
Oh,
go
yeah.
ahead?
Those aren't actually my friends. We were roommates at the um, the national final for the Chinese National Linguistic Olympiad. We were placed in the same room and we were on the same team for the group competition. So it was just a really fun experience because, well, it's fun and very, very difficult at the same time
Yeah,
because
obviously.
we had it was like a 3 day 4 day-ish experience, and then two entire day we had like competition straight up. I remember for the individual competition, it lasted from 10 in the morning all the way until 4 in the afternoon. It's like 6 entire hours of just cracking down problems. And then I remember our lunch was like packed McDonald's. They and then like I didn't even like have time to eat. I kind of just like grab a bite of the burger and then just like stare at the problems because it's just so interesting. So it's such a fun, like I personally feel like it's such a fun competition because earlier you spoke about how you think it's like Swahili language. Well, actually it's not. It's usually
Hmm.
more rare than that. So
Hmm.
I remember we've had something called Ubu Ugu language, which is a language that's spoken in Papua New Guinea and
Hmm.
and I think it's only like spoken by a couple thousand people. And then there's also Ainu Japanese, which I believe currently only have 5 native speakers of it in Japan.
Wow.
And yeah, and also you sometimes get to know about like let's think Asian Tibetan. I
Hmm.
remember I did a writing problems on Asian Tibetan, and in this year's Chinese national final rounds, we actually did something. I don't even know what it is called in English because I've honestly never heard of the language before. It's like a kind of Asian Chinese writing um, that kind of that follows a really different logic than the modern Chinese. So
Hmm.
I would say overall it's a really interesting experience. Even though we had just 6 full hours of continuous tortures to our
Yeah.
brain.
So it's
Um,
like 6 hours. Yeah, that's 6 hours is
yeah,
sort of very long, and you're just sitting there cracking linguistic problems for like whole 6 hours for 3 days.
yeah.
That's quite a challenge. That's quite an achievement. And how you guys did? Did you guys win the take home the championship or something like that?
No, not really, because this is my first year doing a competition. Um, I did had I did won a silver award for my individual competition, but for the team we won bronze, I think.
That's very
But
nice.
overall,
Yeah, good for you.
I'm pretty like content with it.
Yeah, I mean, you go into a competition for the first time, the competition that lasts for 3 days and 6 hours every single day, and you bring home the bronze for the first time you participate in that competition. So that's quite an achievement. And you also told me that you went to, yeah, actually, guys, before Olivia entered the study of linguistics, she was an active participant of the school's foreign language, of our school's foreign language department. And she's actually taking honors in Latin right now, I believe, right? And I think it's really cool because so there are people out there. I'm going to ask for your opinion on this because there are people out there who obviously think that the learning of a second or a third language is not worth the time because one might not even travel to the country that speaks a language for his whole lifetime. Then what's the point of learning the language? And what's your opinion on that kind of mindset? And I think you're actually pretty well qualified to answer that question because you're learning Latin, which is a language that it's pretty much extinct. So what's your opinion on the learning of language and the true value of learning a second language?
So I personally don't think that I would benefit the most from learning a language is to travel because I mean I'm fluent in English, and with English you can travel to most of the places in the world without too much obstacles.
Hmm.
I personally feel like the true benefit of learning a second or third language is to understand the culture behind it. As I said earlier, languages are really just intertwined with societal values and its culture. And you will find things in a different language that cannot translate into your native language. For instance, I just went to see Mulan past weekend, and
Hmm.
I realized that the Mulan that I read growing up in Chinese folktale is just so different from Disney's version of Mulan because a lot of the Chinese societal values doesn't really translate into the more Americanized Disney version of Mulan. And the same thing applies to languages. So as for me, I found Latin so like intriguing because the culture and the society behind Latin, which is ancient Rome, of course, is just so like drastically different from anything I've learned, anything I've experienced before. Is Ancient Roman society is just so like distant from the modern society and the Asian Chinese society that I grew up learning, and it really introduced me to a something that I could not like have imagined before, like before I learned Latin. And I think it's really that kind of experience in the culture and the like societal values of the society that speaks your second or third language that really that just really strikes you. At least it really strikes me personally.
Yeah, so it's not just about the study of a language and go travel. I kind of hold the same opinion on this kind of debate. It's not just about learning a language and then traveling to another place and speaking with the local people. Language is not even a tool anymore. I myself take a third language in Spanish, although I'm not that good in Spanish for now. But it's not just about learning a language and speaking it. It's also about like a key to open the door to the new world. Learning about a whole new culture, because language, as you said, is very heavily tied with the indigenous culture. And learning about a language is the key way to kind of learn about the new culture and learn about the world that you have never discovered before. It's about learning some new things. And it's that kind of curiosity that always propels us to go forward and kind of open our eyes and see what's going on around us. So I definitely agree with what you said upon learning a language and its connection with the culture. And what are some suggestions that you would make to the students who are currently taking a second language? I myself, it's a really hard. I think it's definitely not easy to learn a foreign language. It incorporates many verbal practices, many writing practices, and one can easily think that this too hard. This work is too hard, and I want to quit. I myself, kind of have had my hard times with Spanish, as well, and especially when we were both learning English, it's a pretty tough experience because in China, right, we start learning English from a very young age, but we have to learn it because it's an international language, and only if we learn English can we go on. Can we be where we are today in Culver, right? So, what are some of your suggestions that you would make to some students who are taking a second language or someone who is generally learning a foreign language right now?
One really big advice is that well, the beginning is always really hard because you'll have to deal with completely different like grammar and as I said earlier, each language has its distinctive logic, and I personally have experienced a couple of different logics and languages. I'm sure as well, since Chinese and English operates in completely different order and completely different logic. So the beginning of learning a language is really hard, and I really do feel that thinking back on how I get started with English and then later how I get started with Latin. But it really will get easier once you may think that like looking at those grammar charts, those declensions are just such a terrible, terrible thing to do because you just can't like memorize those. But you kind of have to get like a general idea of those before you get the opportunities to really dive into this language and find its find the charms of it and to learn more about the societies and the culture behind it. So I think you really do have to like push yourself in the beginning stages of learning a language, especially if you've never learned, if you don't know any languages in the same like language family, which linguistically makes them more similar to each other. So that makes it more easier to learn, but that's a different story.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
yeah, and anyways, you just kind of have to like push yourself through the initial stages of learning a language, and then I think most people would like grow to like it. Um, so for those who are not learning a language that is no longer spoken, I think that reading books, novels, watching movies, listening to music in that targeted language would just be so helpful. And it will also be really entertaining as well. And for those of you who learn Latin, I'm sorry, but you really do have to like push yourself through the initial stages of it, and then you probably could find more fun and more interest in reading about the Roman societies and reading about what Roman life would look like, even though we don't have and really like definite records of it. It's really about just piecing up pieces that you can be able to find throughout your learning of Latin, and you could basically make up your you could like make your own assumptions of the ancient Roman society, because there's no definite records of it and no one know if it's right or wrong. You can find those remnants of the ancient Roman society through your study of Latin. And I think that is also very important as well. I think it also applies to other languages. You could like just find bits and pieces of its cultural influences in like in other cultures as well. I'm sure I'm not familiar with Spanish at all, but I'm sure there you could find like remnants of Hispanic influences in modern American society as well. So I think you really like once you're after that initial really difficult stage of learning a language and you get the ability to dive deep into this language, you will find just you'll find its influence everywhere, and you will rejoice in finding those influence because it will really make you proud, and it'll make you feel like, oh hey, I know this, I know where this comes from, and then you just really you will feel really good about yourself while learning something new. So I think perseverance is definitely one major advice
Yeah.
that I'll have for the new beginners of a language. And then after that, it's just to keep an eye out there for the language that you're learning, because there's a lot more that lays uncovered, and you kind of just had to find it, and then you will rejoice in finding it.
That's true. Yeah. From my side personally, Spanish in Mexico is drastically different from Spanish in actual Spain. And if you take a look at it academically, the Spanish conquistadors came to Latin America and Mexico, and they kind of imposed their language and culture and their religion on the local indigenous people, and they intermarried with the local population to form the mestizo society, which are most of the Latin American population that we see today. So I definitely agree with you will find the joy once you see something and you know where it come from, and you know how that happened. You in your deep down in you know the cause and effects of this whole civilization and their languages. So I think that's definitely a very cool thing to kind of learn about and discover. And guys, Olivia actually managed to take her expertise in Latin into academic studies. She went to Stanford Summer Humanities Institute, which is a summer program based on the Stanford campus. And she studied the civilization of Rome specifically in that summer program. So she's able to take her expertise of the language actually into the culture and dive deep into the academic atmosphere, to study that culture and that civilization. So that's another example of how language can open the door to a whole new reign of study to you. So definitely keep up learning language, and have that perseverance in entrenching you in the culture of a foreign atmosphere, or the culture of a foreign civilization, of course. And Olivia, the last question I have for you is, kind of speaking from a macroscopic perspective, what do you think is a contribution that linguistics can make to the human civilization, or what is the contribution the study can make to ourselves, from a more macroscopic perspective to our species?
So academically, right now linguistics really dives into two different directions. So one direction, it kind of goes to preserving extinct languages. Like I said, the Linguistic Olympiad has a lot of problems on nearly extinct or endangered languages, and that is also a mean that that like the world is trying to preserve endangered languages and trying to save it. I believe that there's also been governmental efforts in creating at least like in China, there has been governmental efforts in creating a written system and to document those some of those like dialects or languages of the minority nationalities in China. So one part of linguistics really dives into like preserving the language, and through preserving the language, we kind of preserves the culture behind the language. You'll preserve the folk tales, some of the like the myth, um, and you'll get to like preserve a different kind of society, even with its people kind of like drifting away from their origin. You still get that language and that cultural and that societal values in some internet or database. And
Mm-hmm.
another branch of linguistic actually is drastically different from the part that I just spoken of. That is it's more like computational linguistics, which has more to do with computer science rather than social studies. And I know it's really interesting, but think about it. Computer science virtually is a language for computers, a way for computers to like communicate with the human beings and to deliver messages. So like logically speaking, it's pretty similar to a language. And so I over the final like competition of the Chinese Linguistic Olympiad, we had attended several like speeches or presentations by modern scholars in linguistics, and one of them spoke about how like to implement linguistic knowledge into developing computer science programs and artificial intelligence so that they could like somehow like uh, optimize their systems to keep up to date with the modern language or like modern slangs on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So linguistic is really like just kind of drifting into those two really big chunks, and even though they're like really just different from one another. And
That's true.
like personally, as for students, um, I feel like the study of linguistics it will help you to like learn different languages faster. And I personally have found that to be the case as well. So over the summer, I actually taught myself Italian with Duolingo and a bunch of like
Wow.
YouTube videos, and I actually think that like I pick up Italian so much faster than I did with English and Latin. And it just kind of gets easier and easier because after doing the linguistic competition, I know the common logic behind languages, and especially behind the Romance languages, which all derived from Latin itself. So think about it. It took me like probably 5 years to be fluent. Well, it took me probably 8 years to be fluent in English. It took me 2 years to finish to like finish Latin from level 1 to AP, and then it took me like a summer to kind of be able to like have daily conversation in Italian. So it really gets easier once, as I said, once you push through the initial stages of learning a language, and once you have some kind of like linguistic knowledge in your mind that kind of just helps you to make senses of a lot of like declensions and really boring grammar rules, but it would all come together.
That's true. Yeah. So now you have seen, your perseverance actually paying back. You're learning Italian. That totally makes sense. Like, that's when you see like your hard work paying off. Is when you're learning a new language, and it gets easier and easier as you become an expert in linguistic and Latin. And I think I found what you said about computational linguistics very interesting. I think that really reviews linguistics nature as an interdisciplinary study. It's like psychology. You can use psychology in development into behavioral sciences. You can also use it to kind of study about the economy and consumer markets, consumer behaviors. So it's like linguistics the same thing. You can use it to develop technology, and also you can use it to preserve the endangered languages, like what you talked about before, about these languages that are only spoken by a very limited number of native inhabitants. So yeah, I think this is definitely a very interesting vein of study. And thank you, Olivia, for giving us this opportunity to kind of learn more about this subject and learn more about learn about this, your expertise into this study. And recording. Never mind. That's Terry. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to learn more about your subject of study. And actually, Olivia has a club, right? You have a club in linguistic in Culver, right? So, if you guys are in any way interested in the study of linguistic or foreign language, go sign up for Olivia's club about Linguistic Olympiad. She'll be taking you guys to competitions and helping you guys learn about the study of linguistics. So, that's a really cool opportunity. So yeah, again, thank you, Olivia, for coming, and thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next time. All right.
Thank you.